All right. Testing, testing. All right. Hi, guys. I am Ram from Great Learning, and today we'll be doing another live session with me. Today our topic is career roadmap for DevOps. So basically, we'll be understanding what kind of career path you can take, and what kind of skills you will need, and what kind of learning roadmap will you have to take to achieve that goal you want to take. Right? Basically, I'm gonna give you guys an outline of what really happens when you go into the DevOps thing, and what are the different things you need to learn, right, to get your whole journey started and start really understanding what DevOps is and what is the amount of effort you guys need to put in, right? Okay, so I know there's a lot of new people over here, and there are a lot of people who've already seen our sessions, my sessions, right? I can't remember everyone's name, but there are a lot of names I remember, like Kashyap is one of those persons. And I want all of you to be regulars because it really, helps me connect with you guys. And again, it's our way of giving you guys information. This is completely free. There's no paid thing, anything, right? All right. So before we do get our session started, I want a comment from you guys in the chat. I'm going to be checking it over here, and I want to see if you guys can hear me properly and if you guys can see me properly. Since we started doing these face shoots also, like the cam with the whole presentation. Well, it really is important that you guys give me a feedback whether everything is clear cut, you can hear me, and whether you can see the screen or not. All right. And while you guys give me that feedback in the YouTube comments or YouTube chat, I'm going to go ahead and show all the newcomers something called Great Learning Academy. So here at Great Learning, we've come up with something really, really awesome. It's called Great Learning Academy, right? So go ahead and type Great Learning Academy on Google, or you can go to our website itself, that is greatlearning.in/academy. Now, this is a free venture that has been started by Great Learning, where you find more than 200 plus courses with more than 1,000 plus hours of free content, right? So this is basically a place where you get free courses and you get free certificates, and the credibility for those certificates is amazing because this is by Great Learning, right? It's a premier institute, and we have started this venture because of the COVID issue that has happened. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and a lot of freshers are not able to find jobs, right? And that might be one of the reasons you guys have clicked on this live session, because you want to know what kind of career you can choose, right? So this is a good place for you guys to start. It gives you a certificate in any field that you may be interested in. So we have a lot of fields. Once you come to the website, you can go ahead and search domain or course name over here, or if you want, you guys can scroll down and see all the different things that are being offered. One of the most important things I would recommend for you guys to check out is the upcoming live sessions. As you guys can see, this is the live session that's happening today, and we have more live sessions upcoming. And go ahead and check them out. If you're interested in something, you can always, talk to these trainers. They always help you out in any question you have. And likewise, if you guys have any questions, leave them in the chat. I would love to answer them. Now, coming down, you guys can see all the different categories of courses we have over here. We have popular courses like Introduction to Digital Marketing. Digital marketing is pretty big these days. We have something in English. If you guys are into English, we have, if you want to learn English, अगर आप लोगों को हिंदी आती है और आप इंग्लिश सीखना चाहते हैं, तो इंग्लिश के लिए भी हमारे पास कोर्सेज हैं और आपको डेफिनेटली हेल्प आउट करेंगे. और अगर आप और इफ़ यू आर इनटू समथिंग डेटा साइंस और मशीन लर्निंग और आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस एंड इन आईटी एंड सॉफ्टवेयर, वी हैव ऑल ऑफ these different fields also. And I would definitely recommend you guys go ahead and check those out, because we have a lot of award-winning professors and industry veterans coming and making these courses for you guys, right? And also, if you're not into the technical background, that's totally fine. We have a lot of different other things, like we have marketing and finance, and we have digital marketing, and we also have designing also. So if you're the artsy kind of person, then you should definitely go check these things out. So again, Great Learning is a great place. You don't have to pay a single pesa or single cent, whatever currency you're using, and it will help you out. It's you get access to a lot of things like code sets, data sets, and presentations, learning material, and you need to finish a quiz. That's only then will you get a certificate. So it's not like just anyone can get a certificate. You need to study the topic at hand and then earn a certificate. But it does help you. Once you go through the course, you can easily solve the quiz and get the certificate that you want, right? So that's about Great Learning Academy. Coming back to our presentation, we're going to be talking about career roadmap for DevOps. But before that, let me check what is your reply in the YouTube comments. All right. I'm opening it up. Give me a second, guys. Actually, I have it open. Is just have to load it. Right. Okay, so we see a lot of people are giving me a feedback. We have Usha saying hi. We have Sumit saying hi. Hello, Usha. Hello, Sumit. And we have Param saying hello. We have Technical Virus saying hello, sir. ये class Hindi में है क्या? Technical Virus, we have classes in Hindi, but this class is specifically in English. So if we do any class in Hindi, we will mention that this is a class in Hindi, right? All right, so we have a lot of other people also. We have Sonu Saini, we have Suraj, we have Sultan. Yep, okay, you guys can see me clearly and you guys can hear everything fine. All right. Technical issues like liked and subscribed. Thanks a lot, guys. Don't forget to give us a like. That really benefits us. And here's what, I'm not gonna tell you to like it right now. I'm gonna ask you to watch this session. If you really enjoy it, then go ahead and give that like because only like stuff you really like. All right, so let's move on with the this thing session. Now, one thing is there, guys, that in this session, I will be outlining the whole journey you will be taking. Okay, and since I'm going to be outlining that, I want it to be like an interactive session where I answer the questions you guys have. Now, I see a lot of people. So generally, what happens is people start asking questions and I answer them, right? So I might sometimes miss your questions. That's totally fine. I'll always try to answer as many questions as I can, and I'll try to answer them as perfectly as I can. All right, to my knowledge. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing I want to talk about is the agenda. What are we going to cover? There's a lot of topics, but not complex topics over here. So we're just going to go through why do you need to learn about DevOps? Why is DevOps used these days? What is DevOps? Who's a DevOps engineer? DevOps roadmap, DevOps tools, and we're going to be learning about DevOps roles and DevOps average salary. So these are the different topics we'll be going through. And feel free to ask any questions. It can be related to your career. It does not have to be related to DevOps. It can be related to the similar field that is IT, right? So if you're in the IT field and you want information about something in the similar field, and if it's best if it's related to DevOps, all right? So, but feel free to ask me questions. I will answer them to the best of my knowledge. All right, so let's begin. Let's talk about why DevOps. So, how many of you actually know what DevOps is? So, let me go ahead and let me know in the chat that some of you know about DevOps, or if you guys don't know at all about DevOps. Do you want me to go into detail the core stuff of it and explain everything? Or do you guys have some idea and you're actually here for the roadmap and you want to understand what the whole outline of the career is going to be like? So go ahead and leave a comment in the chat and I will try to check it out. All right, so we have a first question already, and that is Karthik is asking how DevOps is evolving nowadays. So that's a really good question, Karthik. So these days, you've heard of what DevOps is. It is a technology, it is a philosophy, it is the mindset and the culture, it's the way of software development, right? And software development is booming these days. You're seeing software being used by a lot of different companies, from big companies to small companies. Everyone is using software these days, and everyone wants to make sure that the software that they are providing to the customers is of the highest quality. How do you do that? So you do that by getting the best people. You do that by offering the best salaries. You do that by giving the best resources you have. But sometimes you don't have that many resources, or sometimes you have to be smart enough not to utilize all your resources in one place, right? To avoid mistakes where you don't, hire people who are well suited for the job, or let's say that the human element that is involved in software development is the one that can cause errors a lot of times, right? And you may not always know who to hire best. So what companies generally do is they implement this technology, that is DevOps, into their systems, and they automate the whole process. They reduce the amount of involvement from the human part, and they try to hire people who have this kind of knowledge. So when Karthik asks how is it developing these days, right? So these days, what's happening with DevOps is that it's not an idea, it's an idea, right? It's not something that is contained by one company or one person. So people are continuously contributing to it. People are, evolving over it. As ideas become older, they become more simplified for casuals to understand, and they became more intricate for the people who already have the knowledge to understand how to utilize the principles and values that are already there even better. So what I'm trying to say is that DevOps is becoming more of an intricate process that is allowing a lot of these companies to make all of their software development process much more smoother and much more efficient. And it's not very expensive to implement it. You just need a slight bit of knowledge, and you need to distance yourself away from legacy techniques and methodologies, right? And that is not that hard, because a lot of companies that start up right now, let's say in 2020 some 10 companies started, they don't have to worry about having legacy software issues, shifting from legacy to a new kind of trend, because they are starting new, so they can easily come into this DevOps field, right? All right, so I hope that answered some part of your question. So someone is asking big data career, please. So you want to know about big data career, right? So that is a good career choice. I would definitely recommend checking out any of the big data courses that we have, in which you can learn about big data and get yourself a certificate. So it's a career you should take if you are into number crunching, and if you like to work with a lot of data. I hope that answered your question, Vikash. And we have Manoj asking, hi, sir, what is the future of DevOps jobs? All right, so we have a lot more questions coming in, but I wanted to see what people are saying about DevOps. I don't know what DevOps is, totally new. What is DevOps? All right, so let me clear this off. So what is DevOps? So you guys know what software methodology is, right? No, let's go back. No, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about software development. Software development is the process of developing software, right? And it's not as easy as just writing the code and just executing it. In real life, in industries, in companies that make big softwares or complex softwares, that's not how it works. It's a lot of complicated process. There's a whole pipeline setup where you develop the software, where you test the software, where you build the software, then you deploy the software. There's a lot of processes involved in software development, and it's a very long and complicated, or let's say it's a intricate process. It requires a lot of different tools also. And to make sure that this whole process is very smooth and efficient and productive, we use a lot of methodologies. You guys might have heard of Agile. You might have heard of Scrum, right? Which is a framework of Agile. And you might have heard of extreme programming. You might have heard of feature driven development. These are all the different kinds of methodologies that are being used in software development in conjunction with other methodologies to make sure software development is very smooth. And that's why we use DevOps also. DevOps is a new and burgeoning technology or methodology that allows us to make sure that the product that we're delivering, the software product to the customers, is of the highest quality. That's why DevOps, right? That's why we make use of DevOps. Now, why don't we make use of something called waterfall model? Waterfall model is something that has been used for ages, right? It's one of the older methodologies that was started being used in 60s and 70s when software scene was just starting. Well, the thing is that with waterfall you have a lot of drawbacks. As you can see, these are the phases of waterfall model. You have requirements phase, you have designing phase, implementation phase, testing phase, deployment phase, and maintenance phase. So these are very well defined phases. I'm not not bad mouthing waterfall over here. It is a good methodology, but then you have your use cases for certain methodologies. You can't use them everywhere. Waterfall is for a particular niche of software development where you don't have to worry about the constant changing market. Every day, people want more and more and more. And you cannot deliver more and more and more with waterfall model, because it was designed in such a way that you would take like 1 year or 2 years to keep on developing software without any breaks. I mean, breaks as in you don't show it to the client, or you don't review it. You just keep on going through all the processes, like the requirements process phase, the designing phase, the implementation phase, the testing phase, and the deployment phase. So the client only gets to see the product at the end of the development lifecycle. And this development lifecycle can be very long. Obviously, this still has use cases in today's world, but not really in the main market, right? That's why we start using other methodologies. If you look at the drawbacks of waterfall methodology, you guys will understand this better. It's it's a very long development life cycle. It's very difficult to backtrack in it. There's no finished product till the end of the life cycle. It's very tough to plan for. Can you plan for 1 week better, or can you plan for 2 weeks? I mean, 2 years better? Obviously, you can plan for 1 week better, right? And some of the methodologies like Agile, you just have to plan for 1 week or maybe at 1 month, because in Agile you have multiple sprints. These sprints are basically small intervals of time where you're developing software. So let's imagine there is a sphere, and in this sphere you do all of your work, right? You do only a small part of the work. Let's say that there are 10 100 lines of code to be written, but you write only 10 lines of code. But that's fine. The 10 lines of code works, and you execute it and it's working fine, and you give it to the stakeholder or the client, right? And you ask them for feedback. You ask them how this code was, and they say that they have these changes in mind, or they say that they want this to be different, right? So what happened here? You wrote 10 lines of code in one day, you got your feedback, and the next day you start doing it again with the new changes in mind, right? So you don't wait for like a year, or you don't wait for like such a long period to get feedback. You're getting regular feedbacks, and you're developing software in smaller chunks. So it's like dividing your work into smaller chunks and doing your work in smaller chunks instead of doing it in one whole go. And that is always better, not just in software development. Take my word, it's the better in everywhere else. So you have a lot of other methodologies also being involved over here, like spiral model, extreme programming, feature driven development, and lean methodology. So one of the most important methodologies being used today is DevOps. Now, what is DevOps exactly? It's difficult to pinpoint the definition of DevOps. I know a lot of you have this question. Like like you probably are thinking that I get it. DevOps is something that we use to improve software development process. But what is it exactly? So this is not just your question. A lot of people actually have this question. What is DevOps? Because DevOps is a lot of things. It is the way of software development. It is the values and principles that you have to keep in mind when developing software. It is methodology, right? It helps you to plan out everything. And it is a bunch of tools also. So it is basically a set of all of these different things that help you achieve that one thing in the end. That is a better software. So if you want like a proper definition of it, let's say that there are developers and operations team, right? So the word actually came from developers dev and operations ops. So that's how the dev ops came. The role combines a bit of both developers work and the operation teams work also. But if you wanted a proper definition, here's the proper definition. Let me read it out. DevOps is a set of practices that combines software development, dev, and IT operations, that is ops. It aims to shorten the system development life cycle and provide continuous delivery with high software quality. So what it is basically saying is that it reduces the time you take to make the software, but you are continuously delivering the software, and you're delivering a high quality software, right? So that is the purpose of DevOps. And it is used in conjunction with a lot of different other methodologies. Now, this is purely subjective. If in your company you want to use DevOps with Agile, or if you want to use DevOps with Scrum, or if you want to use DevOps with extreme programming, that is on to you. But they say that DevOps and Agile work very well together. It's generally what software developers do these days. They mix both Agile and DevOps. So there are a lot of benefits to DevOps, like high productivity increase. I've talked about it. There's a high quality. We're talking about the software, and high returns. So when you make your whole process more efficient, you're cutting costs and you're saving a lot more money. And technically speaking, there are a lot of other benefits also, like rapid delivery and being able to expand your services very easily, and robust security, right? All right. So let me just check out the chat. Let's see if you guys have more questions over here. All right. So you guys don't have any more questions. Guys, if you do have any questions, if you didn't understand anything, please leave that in the chat. I'll try to answer it. Okay. So now let's get to who is a DevOps engineer. So if you guys know about what software development process is, you might have a little bit of an idea. If you're not from the software background, that's fine. I'm going to explain it more clearly. So who is a DevOps engineer? So a DevOps engineer is kind of like a lead person, right? He's a person who understands how the whole software process works. He knows it end to end. He knows what happens in the development process. He knows what happens when the software has been developed and it has to go for the building process. So let me give you an example. So let's say there is a developer who is making code for a certain feature of an app. Let's say that this feature is a paying feature. It allows you to pay for certain services of this app, right? So once the developer has made this feature, he pushes it to the Git repository. It's Git repository is a place where you store your code, right? So once he's stored that code, what happens to that code? So that code actually moves on from that storage location to another location where the processing happens, where that code is built into the software. Your code is not by itself the software. The code needs other things, right? It's just a set of instructions that you've written for the computer to understand. Now the computer needs resources to execute these instructions. So these resources can be your functions, external functions, your frameworks, your tools, your dependencies. All of these different things are required to run your software, to run your code. So once you take all of these things and when you bunch it up with your code, when you combine it with your code, that's when you get the software. Your software is your code, your frameworks, your dependencies, your functions, your libraries, and the tools that you need, all of them bunched up together. That's your software. And when you make it into the software, that is your building process. Okay? I hope you guys understood that. So once you build your process, once you build your software, the software goes to the next part of its life cycle, that is to the testing phase, where the tester comes and he tests around this thing, tests this thing, dynamically tests it to make sure that the software that has been developed is of the highest quality. It is very well designed, there are no bugs, and it actually serves the purpose it was designed for. So let's say that paying service was created by the developer, then this particular software should have that paying service and it should be working. So that's what the tester does. Now, once he's done all of those different things, the software can go for deployment. And in the deployment phase is where this software becomes available to the end user. And when I say it becomes available to the end user, I'm saying something like you're using YouTube. You're watching each other from YouTube. Or let me use a new example. I've used this example many times. Let's say that you are ordering some items from Amazon. You download the Amazon app, right? So once you download the Amazon app, you start using the Amazon app. This Amazon app itself is available to you. So that means it has been deployed on some server somewhere in the world and you're able to access it. So that is the deployment process. You're deploying your software so that the end users can access it. And then comes the monitoring phase where you're monitoring what your software is doing, because monitoring is very important. Just remember that anywhere you are in the world, monitoring is very important. You need good feedback. You need to understand what you've done and you need to understand what you need to do in future, like make the changes, right? So you get that feedback from the software itself and you get the feedback from the customers also. So this is basically a software development process. And what does a DevOps engineer do in all of this? So a DevOps engineer here, he would be responsible for basically designing and maintaining the software development pipeline. This pipeline is basically the place where the software is being developed. So the part where the developer pushes it to the Git repository, the storage location. From the storage location, it goes to another location where it gets built. How does it do that? And what are those locations? So those locations are situated on a pipeline. This is a virtual pipeline. It doesn't actually exist. Like you virtually think of it like a pipeline, right? And in this pipeline, you're basically mending the software until it becomes the best product it is. So as a DevOps engineer, you will be responsible for designing. That means you need to create this pipeline. You need to see what is the best possible pipeline that is possible depending on the product you're developing and depending on the resources your company has. And you need to maintain it also. As a DevOps engineer, you will need to make sure that if there are any errors, you need to resolve them. If there are any bottlenecks in the pipeline, you need to resolve them, right? So as a DevOps engineer, you have to do these kind of things. This is like overall thing. He also makes sure that the software is deployed properly without any issues. So one of your KPIs on which you will be judged upon by your company will be how efficient were your deployments. So was there any issue in the deployment? Now, why did that issue occur? Did that issue occur because the infrastructure wasn't stable? That means the server wasn't very well optimized for the software deployment, or was it some developer's fault who did not write the code well? So that is again, a thing that they have to make sure. Now, obviously, they can't attribute or they can't remember all the things, and they are human in the end. They make errors. That is totally fine. But their job is to try to make the best deployment as much as possible without any as many issues. A DevOps engineer knows how to automate processes and write automation scripts. So this is also very important, where you need to understand how to automate the process. Automate as in reduce the amount of human involvement. So when I say we take the code from Git repository or the storage location to another location, how does that happen? Do we do it, or does it automatically happen? So if it automatically happens, that means you're automating. If you're doing it by yourself, like you're taking the, copy pasting it, then it's not automated, right? So a DevOps engineer is supposed to make sure that the whole process is automated. And if it's more automated, it's always better. Like, take an example of car manufacturing. In the previous days, humans used to do it, right? We would have one like whole a production line where the car will keep moving forward, and the guys from either side will start working on the car, right? And keeps moving forward until it becomes a finished product. Similarly, even in software development, you have like a production line, and we call it pipeline. You call it pipeline, you call it production line, doesn't matter. And the software keeps on moving, and people from side, they come and they fix the issues, they add more things until it becomes a software, right? Until it becomes a finished product. So that is your production line of a pipeline, and the DevOps person is supposed to automate it. These days, car manufacturing is done by robots, like mostly. Designing and all that is done by humans, but manufacturing is done a lot by robots. And similarly, we want to do that with software development also. DevOps engineer has, oh yeah, and he also knows how to keep the whole infrastructure secure and robust. Now, security is an important aspect. So the DevOps person needs to make sure he knows at least the security standards there are. You should not make those mistakes where he leaves his uh, username and password in text format. That is a very careless thing to do. Never leave your username and password in text format anywhere, because people can basically access them very easily. So there are security protocols and measures to follow over there. So he needs to keep those in mind. A DevOps engineer has excellent communication skills. So this is again important. You have to talk to a lot of people. Since you are the kind of person who knows end-to-end things, you will need to make sure that your communication skills are really good, because you have to talk to so many people. You have to talk to the developers, you have to talk to the testers, you have to talk to the operations team. If you're not solely responsible for infrastructure, you need to talk to the infrastructure team. You need to talk to the business side also, because you need to understand how the business is to make the pipeline most effective, right? To do that, you need to know how to talk to everyone. So excellent communication skills is very important, right? So keep that in mind. All right. On a daily level, a DevOps engineer is responsible for making sure scaling needs of a cloud. Scaling means basically expanding the number of services you have to, basically, um, uh, basically, it's like saying, let's take an example. If you have 100 servers, which can take a million people at the same time, it's a website. Your website has 100 servers, and it can only take a million people at a time, because that's its capacity. But if a billion people start coming, what do you do? So you have to expand your services. You have to expand the number of servers you have. This time you have 1,000 servers or 100,000 servers to accommodate, that's the word that I was looking for, a billion people. So that is scaling. You basically expand your services. That is scaling. So the scaling can depend on your need. So you can have, at one point of the day, you can have a large number of servers serving you. At one point of the day, you have only one server serving you. This can depend on the need you have, the requirement basis. And obviously, the DevOps engineer is supposed to optimize all the processes, manage all the permissions, and do the documentation, right? Okay. So this is what a DevOps engineer is supposed to do. If you guys have any questions about this, please leave in the chat. I'll try to answer them. I think you guys are asking questions, and I'm not able to see these chats. So let me just bring out that. Hmm, let me restart this. Okay. See, yeah. So you guys were asking a lot of questions, and it wasn't just showing. It just wasn't showing up on my chat. All right. So, so Anuj is asking what is DevOps. I hope I answered that. HIL is asking difference between DevOps and Azure. Okay. DevOps is a methodology. Azure is a cloud platform. Okay. Azure is not a methodology. It is a product developed by Microsoft that is a cloud provider. So a cloud provider is basically it's a service where you're offered infrastructure. So let's say that I have a laptop, and this laptop has 4 GBs of RAM and 4 GBs of RAM and 4 GBs of hard drive space. Let's say, and I want to expand this, but I don't have any physical means that is near next to me, right? Because I don't readily have a lot of hard drives available to me. So in that case, what I can do is I can borrow someone else's physical space with the help of internet. I can basically take a server, I can rent a server in America, and that server will have 400 GBs of space. And I can store all my information on that. So who's providing me this service? It's provided by a cloud provider. You have AWS, which is run by Amazon, Jeff Bezos' company. You have Microsoft, who has this product called Azure. And you have Google. Google has its own product called GCP, Google Cloud Provider, right? I hope that's the full form. Yeah, so these are like basically cloud providers that basically allow you to do certain things on the platform. You have a lot of services, virtualization, data mining, data storage. Data storage is a big thing, and there's a lot of different services. I can't go into all of them, but I hope you guys got the difference. DevOps is a methodology. Azure is a product or a service. I do have some basic idea of DevOps, what the future and roadmap. So I am getting to that, Suraj. I was just answering the understanding of what the whole thing is. Yeah, Karthik is saying making the infrastructure manageable, automate deployments of the production, right? Is a business analyst have any role in DevOps? Yes, a business analyst can have a role in DevOps, but if it affects the business in that way, right? So let's say that the business analyst understands that the data can be stored in a much better way, in a much more efficient way, or it can be analyzed using a much better tool. If you're using a tool and you say that you don't like that tool, the company says that you try a new tool. So you talk to the DevOps engineer how to accommodate for that tool into the whole pipeline. But then again, DevOps is about software development, and business analytics is analyzing the business end of it. So it does not always mesh, but you can always come into that thing. For that, you need a deeper understanding of what a company business policy is and what are they doing, right? Okay, so Crazy Tech was asking, summarize everything in the end. Yes, we will do that. Okay, so Godsend is asking if someone is having Linux knowledge and want to DevOps, which tool should be considered for career growth and how? All right, fine. Since a lot of people are asking what tools you need and everything, I will go to that. See, Godsend, if you have a lot of Linux knowledge, you're perfect for a DevOps engineer, because a DevOps engineer definitely needs to know how Linux works, because Linux is used in a lot of operating systems. It is a kernel, and it is Linux based servers. Linux based operating systems are used for a lot of different servers that are used these days, right? So you need to have an in-depth knowledge of Linux to become a DevOps engineer. Okay. All right, so let's say, okay, so the wealth of knowledge a DevOps engineer should have. So these are the different things you should know as a DevOps engineer. Knowledge of Linux, knowledge of operating systems. You need to know how a particular operating system works. You in fundamentals also, and specific cases also. In specific cases, I would recommend knowing Linux and Windows, right? Because these are the most popularly used operating systems in DevOps, or not in DevOps, in software development, more to say, right? You won't use Mac to deploy software. I mean, you can, but you wouldn't, because Mac serves another purpose. It is for a individual's use. Windows, however, is again, you can modify it to become a server, and Linux is generally the most popular thing that I've seen so far being used for software deployment purposes. So you need to know how they work. What is the principles behind this operating system? how does the job scheduling and the device management, all those aspects of it, you need to understand it. Only then can you optimize it. Optimization is a big part of a DevOps engineer, so you need to know in and out. And again, database technology. So you will be integrating databases to your software development process, and you will be working with them. Whereas you'll be where you will be attaching databases to your software products, right? And you need to form those gateways, those interconnections. So you need to know how to work with databases also. And the server technology, again, it goes back into how you need to know how a server works. You need to know how to establish servers and all of those kind of things. All right, so there's a lot more things. I think it will confuse you. Here's what. Let me go into the direct learning roadmap. So this is what you need to do to start basically. First, you need to start with programming, right? Programming is where you need to understand what is programming. If you're a developer already, that's really good because you have the fundamentals with you. If you're not a developer, I would recommend going through the fundamentals of programming, right? If you don't want to be a developer, core developer, that's totally fine, but you need to know the fundamentals of programming, right? Because you are a person as a DevOps engineer, you know in and out. You should know at least how software is being developed and what to do in certain scenarios where the developer is not available. So you need to know fundamentals of programming language. So you can know a lot of different languages. That can be your selling point as a DevOps engineer, or you can have like, no, that is not a selling point, but you can have a lot of different languages under your belt, or you can just know one language really well also, like C++ or Python or Go. Go is becoming very popular these days. I would recommend learning Go, Python, or C++, or learn. What else can you learn? You can learn Node.js. That is not a language, but you can learn JavaScript. That is a language. So there's a lot of different languages. Just pick a language and start learning about it. Then we come to operating systems. Again, I told you guys that operating systems are very important. So you need to understand how the management happens of the processes there are, right? How does the OS work internally? Like what are the different gateways there are in your operating system? What are the different ports you can access? What are the network protocols there in your operating system? And what are the security protocols there are? How does the input output processed or managed by your operating system? And how does your what is the kind of file system your particular operating system has? So all those kind of things you need to be privy with. You need to know about those things. Then we come to servers. So when we talk about servers, you need to know like a lot of stuff. Like you need to know, first of all, what kind of server you want to establish, right? And whether you need to know how to establish like proxy servers and how to make firewalls and a lot of different things. You need to know all the different protocols that are being involved, like your SMTP, that is your messaging mail protocol, and then you need to know your file protocols like HTTP and HTTPS and FTP and all those kind of things. There's one more thing that you guys need to know very well. It's called it's a terminal. So if you guys know about DevOps, then you probably know what a terminal is. If you guys don't know what a terminal is, let me show you. Right. So this is basically a terminal. Every operating system has its own type of terminal. So this is my command prompt. I have PowerShell also over here. But when you're working with Linux, you generally have a bash terminal. If you're working with Ubuntu, if you're a beginner, you have bash terminal. So terminals are places where you are interacting with the system directly instead of having a graphical user interface. Like it is a command line interface. You don't have a mouse in that. You just have to type in commands. So if I open my CMD again, you guys can see this is my CMD, and I start typing in, commands, dir, or let's say I want to CLS. I remove the screen. So these are the commands I'm directly entering. So when you're working with servers, you won't have graphical user interface with mouses, with your basically your Windows environment, anything. You will need to work with a command line interface where you type in all the commands. So let's say you're working on Ubuntu and you want to update your instance. Now this command won't work over here because it's a Ubuntu or Linux command. Sudo apt update. This means that I want to update my apt package manager. I cannot do that over here because there's no apt package manager in Windows. It is a Ubuntu thing. But again, you guys can see what the command is doing. Now, if you wanted to update your Windows, how would you do that? You need to press your Windows button, go to updates, and these days, it just does it by itself. You don't need to even think about that. But as a DevOps engineer, you will need to know those kind of things. All right, let me just come back with server and all right. So basically, start practicing terminal. Know both Windows terminals or whatever terminals you can learn those terminals. All right. So once you've learning those things, oh yeah, there are a few more operating systems that I would recommend. There's knowing FreeBSD. That is, I think your FreeBSD is another thing that you'll need to learn, and you'll need to know Unix-based operating systems also, and you need to know Linux-based operating systems. Now, it also comes down to your requirements. If your company does not have those requirements, then you don't need to learn those things. But if your company has the requirements, you'll need to learn those things. All right. As a beginner, I would recommend learning Linux. Linux is open source. You don't have to worry about learning it that easily. Okay, just go with Linux. That's the safest bet. Again, I told you guys about terminal. And then networking. Again, networking is very important. You need to know the networking protocols and the security protocols. Again, there's HTTP and HTTPS, those kind of things. And then pipeline infrastructure tools. So this is where your DevOps tools come in. Like, there is a lot of tools that you classify under DevOps tools, but what you're actually trying to say is your infrastructure, right? Your infrastructure knowledge, how to establish your pipeline. For those, there are a lot of tools. Let me just go through those tools for you. Right. So these are a lot of tools over here. Do not get overwhelmed. I have one request or one advice. Always, when you're learning, go for open source tools, okay? Because most of the open source tools are the most popular tools. There are a few exceptions, but not always, okay? So learn the open source tools. So you guys can see there are a lot of development tools. This is for establishing infrastructures. So you have continuous development, right? In continuous development, you need to establish how you will be developing your software, how will you be storing your software. So that is a part of your infrastructure. So what are the tools involved in that? You have Git, Mercurial, Azure repository. These are your cloud-based storage locations. So Git is a place basically where you store your code. So if I come over here and if I go to github.com, this is where I'll be storing my code. So this will become a part of my infrastructure. So you guys can see Cube deploy. This is one of my repository. This is one of my codes, and you guys can see the files that are being used over here. This is my website that I want to establish, and I'm using .yaml files that you use with Kubernetes, which is another tool that I will talk about in future. Okay, so this is how you store your code. This is a part of your infrastructure. So Mercurial and Azure repository are similar things to Git, and then building tools. So I've told you guys about building, right? Where you take your code and you make it into the software. So you have tools for that purpose. When you're working with Java, you have these tools, Ant, Maven, and Gradle. Ant is an older version that is not used a lot these days, but you still can know about it. Maven and Gradle you need to know if you're working with Java-based products, Java-based applications. Gradle is used for Android purposes, and Maven is used for your websites or web software, right? So they basically help you take your code and make them into deployable softwares or executables. You know those .exe files that you have in your Microsoft Windows or wherever, those .exe files are executables, or those are your softwares, right? They are built using the help of building tools. MS Build is used for Microsoft products, like whatever Visual, if you're using Visual Basic, or if you're using Node.js, all those things, you'll need MS Build. Database management tools, you need to understand how a database is being designed and how to manage it. So you should learn at least MySQL. It is it is not open source anymore. MariaDB is the open source thing, but MySQL you can still learn for free, right? There's no problem. And these days a lot of people are using MySQL only. MariaDB and MySQL are almost the same thing, so I would recommend either learning either of these things. You have continuous testing. So testing is generally done by your testers, but to establish the infrastructure that allows your testers to do it is a job that will be done by you. So you need to know either of these tools. SonarQube is a static testing tools which relates to your continuous development, where the coder is coding, and while he's coding, this tool will tell it what issues are happening, security vulnerabilities, if he's creating code smells or bugs and all those things. He will do that using Sonar Cube. Selenium is a dynamic testing tool where you test your tool dynamically, test your software dynamically, where the software is running, and while it's running, you see whether it's the most polished software or not, whether it's following all the requirements it should be following or not, those kind of things. All right, so continuous integration. So integration is where you integrate all the different parts of your software. So this is your core of building a pipeline. Whenever you build a pipeline, you build it on the basis of your continuous integration. Just with the name, you can understand you're integrating everything. So Jenkins is the tool that you should be learning over here. I'm not going to recommend any of the other thing. Others are mostly paid tools, and Jenkins is the open source tools that is used a lot in the industry, and people will generally ask if you know Jenkins or not. Then you can learn all other stuff. Jenkins is the main tool. If you even hear about DevOps, you need to start learning Jenkins. Jenkins is your core tool. It allows you to automate all the processes. It allows you to create pipelines where you just push the software, and when you push the software, so let's say this is my software and I push this directly onto GitHub and I didn't do anything else, it will get deployed by itself. How will it get deployed by itself? It will get deployed by itself because of the help of Jenkins. In Jenkins, you will configure a software pipeline where it will detect a change in your repository. It will know the address, and once it detects a change over here, it will copy the repository, whatever's there, and it will shift it to the next thing, the building process. Then it will shift it to the testing process, and then to the deployment process. So Jenkins allows you to do that. Basically, it's a automation and an integration tool and a deployment tool. Okay, so you have continuous deployment also. These are specific deployment tools that monitor your deployments. You don't generally need them, but you can use them. You can deploy with Jenkins also. Configuration management tools, these are important. These allow you to manage a lot of processes. These also allow you to automate. So let's say you have hundreds of servers and you want to update them to a newer version of a particular software, right? How will you do it? Will you do it manually by going one by one and doing it? Or will you use a configuration script? You will write a script and that script will automate all the processes for you. Then you have orchestration tools. Now, orchestration tools is a very big topic. In simple terms, I want to tell you, it it allows you to create multiple virtual environments in which you can develop your software. Okay, that's all I'm going to tell you. Otherwise, you guys will get very confused. Okay, so to understand what orchestration tools are, I would very recommend you guys checking out my Docker series. I have a Docker tutorial in Hindi, and again, if you guys want to learn DevOps, also we have Docker in that. So I would recommend going to YouTube and typing DevOps Great Learning, right? So the first link you see, guys, this is our 10-hour course. We recently released it. If you are into Hindi, we have a Hindi course also, and we have an English course. So it's a 10-hour course. I go into a lot of details about these things. Okay. All right. So let's come back. We have artifact repositories where you store your executables. You have cloud services that I've talked about: AWS, Azure, GCP, OpenShift, Cloud Foundry, DigitalOcean, Alibaba. You have a lot of cloud services. I would recommend cloud services, again, important. Learn AWS or Azure, right? These are the most popular ones. I would recommend, with personal bias, AWS because I find it really good. But if you want Azure, Azure is also something for you to learn. Now, remember that these are paid to services, but there is a limited free tier where you can use it to a certain extent without having to pay, right? So just keep that in mind when you're using these. Continuous monitoring tools, I've told you guys about monitoring, and you need to integrate monitoring also. You can integrate monitoring with the help of your integration tools, and these tools are like ELK, Prometheus, Grafana, Splunk, NAGOS, Google Analytics. There are a lot of different monitoring tools. Different companies use different stuff. And then scripting. So scripting, I told you guys already, you guys need to know programming language as well as a scripting language. In scripting language, you need to learn how to create scripts. In Linux, you'll be basically learning bash scripting. Bash scripting is important because you're using the bash terminal, and the bash terminal, there's a lot of commands you can run. And I would recommend learning how to use the Linux terminal. That's a very important thing. Okay. All right. So let's go to the roles that there are. Okay, so there are a lot of roles available in DevOps place. Like you have release manager, you have site reliability manager, DevSecOps, cloud architect, systems administrator, product owner, software developer, and tester. So I mentioned software developer and tester over here because sometimes what happens in very starting up companies, right, where they don't have a lot of resources to expand, what they do is they give the DevOps roles to the developers or the testers themselves. So the developer develops the code and he manages the whole pipeline also, like the whole release cycle and everything. And sometimes the tester can also do it. Then you have the release manager who's supposed to make sure that the release that is happening for the software is of very high quality with the least amount of issues. You have DevSecOps is a very specialized role within DevOps. As you guys see DevOps becoming more of its own field, you'll see all these kind of roles coming up where DevSecOps is basically solely responsible about the security aspect of DevOps, right? So this is a very specialized role within it. So as you see DevOps growing, you'll see a lot more roles like these emerging, very specialized roles. Okay. Then you have systems administrator where you need to administer systems, and you can have a side job as a DevOps administrator, DevOps systems administrator. So you're managing all the permissions and everything as an administrator for the system, the IT environment, as well as the software pipeline. So that is a big task again. And cloud architect, this person is the top of the top. You're basically forming an idea of how your software will be produced from one end to the other. So this is kind of a DevOps role, but you involve cloud services in it. There are a lot of different cloud services that you will be using as a DevOps engineer. So a cloud architect is basically more into cloud, and DevOps is like a side thing it does. And product owner is basically a person who owns a particular product. In a company, you can have one particular service. So let's say you have Swiggy. Swiggy has a lot of different services within it, but it's one app, right? And now they'll be coming up with different apps also, but it has multiple services. Those services will have product owners. These product owners will be responsible for a successful deployments of their products or their services. So they also need to know these things. All right. So these are different roles that you will need to know, or no, you don't need to know. You might be involved within. And sometimes you won't even get these roles. Why? Because a company might have its own role. You'll be doing ad hoc a lot of stuff. Okay. Okay, so Dinesh is asking how many months can it take to learn DevOps? So to learn DevOps, you will need a month. To become a little better at it, you'll take 3 months. To become good at it, you might take 6 to 1 year, 6 months to 1 year. To become a master at it, you'll need like 3 to 4 years of experience. That is when it comes to exception handling, right, where you have experience all those things. So there is one thing, guys, I want to tell you is that within DevOps you need to have a lot of experience, and they do not give these roles to freshers. But don't tune away. When I say they don't give these jobs to freshers, I mean it. But they give freshers junior and associate level jobs that are involved with the same thing. So when you're looking for a job for yourself, you need to start off as a junior DevOps, role. Junior DevOps engineer or an associate DevOps engineer. So in these roles, you will have some grunt work, a lot of leg work you need to do, where you might need to do a lot of documentation and you need to sit for hours and make sure that the thing is successful or not. You may not be designing anything, like you won't be designing the whole pipeline. You'll be maintaining certain aspects of it. These are junior roles and you will not get paid a lot of money for those, but the best part about them is that you get a lot of experience and you get a lot of learning, and they are very good for people who are coming from a non-technical background or a non experienced background, because this job is easier for those who have a developer role or a tester role, right, who already have experience here. So that's where DevOps goes to experienced people. But you can start off as a junior DevOps engineer and an associate DevOps engineer. Or you can start off as an intern also within this role. Okay. So these are three ways you can basically earn experience for yourself if you don't have experience and if you're not from a technical background. All right. And Let's look at the salaries. Oh yeah, so there's one more thing. When you keep on learning all of these things in DevOps, it's a very vast field. There are just so many things to learn. You cannot learn all of those things. So here's what I would recommend. To learn about DevOps, go to all the open source tools. Learn all the open source tools and learn the basic stuff. Like you can definitely go through our video that will explain all the basic stuff for you. So your basics will be mastered in this. Then you can move on to the most important stuff. All right. Yeah. Here. So here are the things I would definitely recommend. Learn Linux. Learn Linux. Learn server technology. Learn orchestration. Learn fundamentals of database. Learn the fundamentals of all these things. Learn the fundamentals of cloud technology. Learn the fundamentals of integration and deployment. Learn this very well if you can. Learn this very well if you can. Learn this very well if you can. Automation you learn over time. Scripting is also important. Learn scripting and understand the basic fundamentals of networking. Okay, and communication skills is a must. So all these tick marks are a must, and you as a beginner guy or beginner person, you need to know all of these things. Okay, underlined stuff. Rest you'll learn over time. Even database technology you learn over time. But these things are a must. Linux is a must, orchestration is a must, and continuous integration and deployment is a must, and excellent communications is a must. All the other things, fundamentals. Cloud technology, also there are a lot of things you'll need to learn, but yeah, you guys will get it. All right, let's move on. Now let's, no, I don't want to keep the annotations. Let's come down and let's talk about the average salaries. So the average salary can depend on a lot of things. You generally depends on the company. Different companies offer different things. The job role itself offers different things. Like you have a different kind of job role, job description, you'll get paid differently. The country where the job is, US versus India, salary will differ a lot because of living standards and the countries themselves and which job the city is in. So let's say if you're in Delhi or let's say if you're in Bangalore versus Mumbai, you get paid a lot more in Mumbai because the standards of living are higher in Mumbai, which is not necessarily always the case, but this is how it is. And these days, because of work from home, it doesn't matter a lot on that. How well you negotiate, so you need again excellent communication skills and you need to leverage your skills. If you have a lot of skills, you need to leverage them to get a better salary and obviously your skills. So in America, you can get $100,000 and up. This is your six-figure salary, generic six-figure salary, but a lot of these people get around $3,000 or $4,000, $400,000 or $300,000. Okay, but those are in the big companies and they leverage their skills. In India, for a DevOps average salary would be 7 lakhs and up, but for a junior DevOps role, you will get paid lesser. You will get the industry standard, like the 30,000 per month, or the 3 lakhs per year, or 4 lakhs per year, 5 lakhs per year. Those in that range. That's for a junior role. So expect that and hope for the best. Let's say that if an employer is impressed by you, they can even offer you a better salary. And once you get experience 1-2 years, you'll definitely get a much better salary. All right. So guys, that was it. Let me answer a few questions you guys have. Srinath is asking, how are you? I am fine. Thank you for asking. How can we use Java for scripting? Once again, Anuj. Kashyap. Oh, hi, Kashyap. So I said your name at the start and you appeared. That's really nice. Do we get a job as a fresher on DevOps, Bilash? Not in the DevOps. In the field of DevOps, you can get it, but you will not get it in the DevOps role because DevOps role is an experience-based role. As a junior DevOps, you can get that, right? Let me see what else. Oh yeah, the other person asks Java as a scripting language. So basically, Java you can use it in a lot of different places, right? And it's about how you use it to write automation scripts. So let's say you want to automate a particular facet of this development, right? So to do that, you need to work with Java. If you have experience in Java as a software developer, then you know the fundamentals of programming language. So that is a good plus. And there, then you can utilize Java to become your scripting language also. But in a lot of places, you won't use Java, you'll use like a bash script, or Python is pretty popular also. But you get the point, right? All right. So let me just go back and see if somebody had a question that I didn't answer. Um, CI/CD, Karthik, does a DevOps engineer know the role about? Okay, so this is a question I didn't answer. Does, as a DevOps engineer, should we know about agile methodology and where it will be used in DevOps? Yeah, that is also good. You need to know about that also. Agile is complementary with DevOps, but that is a more a leadership role. If you are as a senior DevOps engineer, then you will be working more as a product manager kind of area, right? Where you're making sure everyone knows what work they're doing. In a lot of companies, a DevOps engineer also needs to do this. He needs to instill the mindset. So it's a methodology also, right? Where you need to use a lot of different values and principles when you're making decisions. So I do talk about that in my 10-hour course. So go check that out. There you do have to use those set of values and principles, where you need to make sure that everyone has those things in their mind also. So as a DevOps engineer, you'll be responsible for that also, but you won't be handling the agile process, the whole agile process. That will be headed by the team leads themselves. And if you are a team lead as a DevOps engineer, then you would do that. Okay. Hope that answered it. All right. So somebody's asking what, okay, can you software testing? That's not a question, Guldeep. If you have a question, ask that. Ishan is asking, should we have to learn all the tools for freshers? Okay. Since this is becoming a problem, let me just go ahead and answer this. Learn Git and GitHub. If you guys can, just screenshot this. Learn Git and GitHub. Learn how to use Docker and Kubernetes. Learn how to use Jenkins. Learn how to use Selenium. Learn how to use Prometheus and Grafana. Then you need to go to AWS, learn services like EC2, um, EKS. No, no, no. These are paid services. I would just recommend EC2. ECS goes into paid stuff. So this is basically open source. There's more. Let me just see. This is for development, Docker and Kubernetes. This is orchestration. This is for integration. This is for testing. This is for monitoring. And this is for your cloud. Okay. And learn Linux and learn Bash scripting. All right. So this stuff is free. Just learn these things. Okay. Let me just remove it. You guys can take a screenshot. This will give you a very good start, right? And I cover a lot of these things in my 10-hour course also, because this is open source, so this is free. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. So these are the things. Learn this, and while you learn this, I promise you, in the journey of you learning these things, you'll learn a lot more. Okay, that's how it generally works. You'll slowly understand that you need to know this, you need to know that, you need to know this, and all that. Okay, so learn this. Yeah, OS fundamentals. No, this is fine. Okay. Can we have, Anuj is asking, can we have a video on Java developer interviews for experienced professionals? Okay, Anuj. If you ask that, I'm going to recommend this to my team, and we will definitely try to come up with a video about Java interview questions. Okay, is that what you're asking for? Java developer interview for experienced professionals. I think we already have one for freshers. We'll try to come up with a one for professionals also. So this is noted. Santosh, I cannot answer that question. Up to what extent we should know Java for scripting, up to which level? I do not know Java myself, I'll be honest. I work with Python and my core language is C++, but I use Python for scripting purposes and I know Bash scripting. So over there, I can tell you. But in Java specifically, you need to know at least the fundamentals of what Java is, how to use that language. See, if you know how to use a language, you know how to you can basically script, right? And you need to know all the other things. Or if you don't know, you can always Google them. So there's no shame in that. There's never any shame. All experienced developers also do it. They Google stuff, they go to Stack Overflow and they copy code of it, but they learn from it. So make sure you learn from these things, okay? How can I create a banner in what? And I don't think it's very relevant. Can you please give a link of the course? Ishan, you can go ahead and, all right. So moderator, please provide the course link in the chat so that the people can go ahead and access it. If not, it's very simple. Don't worry, the moderator is going to go ahead and give this anyway. Just type in Great Learning and DevOps, or just go to our channel. This is one of the recent videos. We released it 2 weeks back, and the Hindi one's released 3 days back. Okay, so this is very new. All right, so I'm not getting any new questions. What's the time? All right, so we are out of time, guys. So this is it for this session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. My name is Ram, and I really, really enjoy teaching you guys. We didn't have a lot of responses today, but that was fine. We had a lot of dedicated people still asking me questions. That's what I like. I like an interactive session, and I want to answer your questions as much as I can. Okay. So before we end, again, check out Great Learning. And if you want a certificate on DevOps, we have a certificate on DevOps as well as Linux also. If you guys want to learn Linux in basics, Linux in Hindi is a very good course that I've created. You guys can go ahead and check this out on Great Learning Academy. Okay, and you get a certificate after you finish it also. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next session.